Hello, this is Let's Talk About Myths, baby, and I am your host, Liv, here with another poorly microphoned introduction. And why? Why does my microphone sound funny? Well, because I'm in Greece, so you will have to forgive me. I am currently in between the 2 group trips that we've had this year. We are rocking our way through Greece. It's so hot. And I've just woken up, so excuse me for being bad at ad-libbing in this moment. Today, I am here with another conversation episode. Today, I spoke with Harrison Voss about, well, gays in the military. Gays in the ancient military. Gays in the ancient Greek military, if we're going to be really specific. And we are. We talked about just generally same-sex, same-gender relationships in the ancient Greek world, obviously applying to men, because let's be honest, we don't really have much in the way of evidence of women, but the relationship between men is fascinating, and Harrison has done a lot of research on that. He is both a writer and a poet and an all-around enormous nerd for this. I mean, who doesn't want more of these kinds of retellings, but also digging deeper into those ideas. So check out the link in the episode's description. We really dove deep into this topic. We talk a little about the sacred band of Thebes, but also just this broader idea of these kinds of relationships in the ancient military, because turns out, what huge surprise, there have always been gays in the military. And a quick note about this episode, we did record, honestly, a handful of months back now, so there might be references here and there to the overall terribleness of the world that haven't aged or have. Conversations. For the love of a good man. Gays in the ancient Greek military. With Harrison Voss.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for coming on my show. I normally am better at introductions than this, but here we are. It's been a day.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. We were talking off mic, but now it's on. But I'm always so thrilled to have. I mean, I will always take any and all topics about like queerness in the ancient world, but specifically, I mean, gays in the military. I think that is you phrased it off mic, so I won't pretend that I said that first. I did steal that from you directly, but I'm so interested. Like, how did you get into this? Can you tell me a bit about your background? Like, where are you coming to the topic from?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess to begin with, I should say that I'm not a formal scholar.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Neither am I.
Yeah, we love it. But I guess let's go all the way back to the beginning. So when I first became interested in ancient Greece as a kid, as a lot of kids do, and then like throughout middle school and high school, became very fascinated in it, and studied it then in college. And my senior year of college, I opted for various personal reasons not to do a thesis, but I was like, okay, if I'm going to not write like a big BA history senior thesis, then I want to do take history seminars and like do kind of independent research tailored to my interests in ancient history. And so at that time, again, I apologize if this is like kind of rambly, but like
no, and also I'm sorry I throw you in, and then it becomes like, oh god, right off the bat, like try to tell a life story. So don't, no pressure.
no worries. And also like my sort of like academic interest in ancient history is very weird in that I entered it kind of through the medieval back doors, I like to say, through the Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire, which I'm not sure how much you know or your listeners know, but was the continuation of the Roman Empire into the Middle Ages. And a lot of the awesome stuff in ancient Greek that we know and read about today is from them. They were preserving it, commenting on it, riffing on it. And their culture really from, late antiquity all the way to 1453 when the empire ended was really imbued in this ancient culture, this ancient Hellenic culture specifically. And so I was fascinated by that civilization, really wanted to study it in college. Didn't really do my due diligence when I was applying to college because there was only one history professor in the department who I could have used as like a major advisor in Byzantine history, and he left my sophomore year. So I was like, all right, work, I guess we're gonna go back to ancient Greece because
okay, that is funny.
Yeah. That's I've always been fascinated in the ancient world, and with Greece in particular. I was just like kind of like a nerdy kid. I loved, Greek myths, and really like Greek history. And I'm also very like stereotypical boy history lover in that I love military history. Now with this sort of route of studying Byzantium gone, I knew well enough that, okay, my real interest in the civilization was sort of this Hellenic underpinning.
Because it's the best.
Exactly.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this Byzantinist I love, Leonora Neville, who has a great quote that's like, I want classicists, like classic students, to be reading Thucydides and the Princess Anna Komnene, who's this 11th century, or 12th century, pardon me, historian, because she was writing in ancient Greek, in the Thucydidean style thousands of years later.
Right.
And it's like you can like read them in dialogue so well. So I was like, all right, if I can't study her, then I'll study Thucydides. And so started to do that. My major advisor was a fantastic professor. I'm going to shout out Richard Billows, amazing man. And he taught a seminar my senior year on the Golden Age of Athens. And I had known, so I guess rewind a little bit. The first semester of my senior year, I took a classical literature seminar. And from like the class I had taken until that point, I was like kind of aware of, okay, you have, I knew that like the gayness was a thing in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
I'm like,
they make it pretty obvious. Like a lot of people have tried to get rid of that, but like they made it pretty obvious.
Really obvious. And like such to the point that like I, my dubious ass was like, oh, but like how gay was it really? Like and then it's like you read any like classical Hellenistic later historian and like they're talking about like so-and-so's boyfriend like ratted him out, like all these little anecdotes about, same-sex couples pretty much. And so I was like, okay. And of course, you have like people like Plato writing about it. And so I was like, all right, in this classical literature course, I really want to look at, because we read basically from like Sappho through Imperial Roman literature. I want to say like Livy.
Oh, yeah. Fun.
Yeah.
No, the Sappho was fun.
The Sappho was really fun. The Sappho was great. And I know you're actually, I don't know, are you a Virgil stan? Like not a big Virgil stan?
I'm not a Rome stan. It's
yeah.
that's kind of my stance broadly. because they're so militarily
Oh, yeah.
empirical, I guess is how I'm going to phrase it.
Yeah.
But I do find Rome interesting. I think it's hard, and I'm sure that you've, encountered this in your own way, but like Rome is a hard one because 50-50, the people who are interested in study ancient Rome are either like cool nerds or fascists. And it's
Yes.
like, it just, to me, like Greece obviously has like similar vibes, but because so much less of their military history, and like just because they were so much less like imperialist minded, I guess, or like rather their empire was a lot less destructive.
Yeah.
I just find I end up loving Greece more, but I do love when other people come on to tell me about Rome.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I won't be one of those people.
That's fine. I do prefer Greece. The Romans weren't as gay. That's why
Yes.
Greece is more fun. They were, but they were different.
No, but you're right. Like, so that's also partly, I also have similar misgivings with Rome. And also with Rome, like all the this is going to sound so silly, but all the names are the same. So like,
yes.
I feel like
and they're way more boring. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that being said, I did love the Aeneid. I just like think it's a fantastic, interesting piece of literature. Obviously, I love Homer. Like
I mean, if you were to say otherwise, I would probably have to kick you off the show.
But I'm like, why can't we all be friends? Why can't we love both? But so in this class, for like a final paper, I was like, oh, I'm gonna put Virgil's Aeneid, specifically the episode in book 9 with the soldiers Nisus and Euryalus in dialogue with Plato's Symposium, which I was riffing off of a argument. I want to say the class's name, his last name is Mikowski, where he talks about how, Virgil seems to be very clearly being like, oh, Nisus and Euryalus are like the Achilles and Patroclus in Plato's Symposium. And basically my paper was like, no, I mean, they are like, they're definitely a homoerotic pair in sort of as Plato lays that out in his Symposium, but not the Achilles and Patroclus. Because Plato's very, I want to say it's in his Phaedrus speech. He talks about how Achilles and Patroclus are not the ideal homoerotic pair, but sort of like the unique homoerotic pair, because this goes back to the classic argument of like who was the top or the bottom pretty much in their relationship of whether because Achilles was younger, he was the beloved, he was the Eromenos, and so by dying after Patroclus, he then is kind of like the more outstanding beloved. Like that's not how the lover and beloved dynamic was supposed to work. The ideal lover and beloved dynamic that Phaedrus discusses in the Symposium is that you have, and I can just get into also the, again, apologies for rambling, but sort of like pederasty as an institution. Yeah. So again, not great. 3 thumbs down.
If it helps, I've done like a 2 or 3 part on the Symposium where I basically came across with that, where I was like, it's really, some of the stuff that they talk about is interesting from certain like points of view, but also broadly, pederasty, terrible, gross and weird.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's like really, really bad. And
it's so hard the way they talk about it too, because it's like, especially the Symposium, because you're making really interesting points about same-sex relationships and simultaneously
exactly. Though I think Yentl Love on I listened to your conversation with her, and she makes the great point, which I'm like, no one talks about this enough, how
I love Yentl.
Absolutely. The age dynamic in the pederastic relationship mirrored pretty much heterosexual relationships as well, where or heterosexual marriages, I should say, where the wife would typically be married when she was a young girl.
Very young.
Yeah. So really not great. It seems to be that the Greeks just were really interested in young people, which is gross. But that being said,
it's hard to love them, and also easy.
Yeah. The institution of pederasty seems to have originated in, I would say, the Archaic period, seems to be the consensus. And we have really interesting early evidence from Crete, actually. They're both from Crete. Or no, I'm sorry. One is from Crete. Where there are these statuettes that were discovered at a sanctuary to Hermes and Aphrodite. And it's of like an older man and a younger man holding hands. And it seems to indicate sort of like an initiation ritual. And the writer Strabo, quoting an older historian, I want to say from like the 4th century BC, Ephorus, he talks about a really weird Cretan ritual where you would have an older lover, an Erastes, as the Greeks would say, would go to the family of a younger man, the Aromanos, the beloved, and say, hey, I want to abduct your son and take him to my country estate. And then for 2 months, they would like hunt, feast, just like guys being bros, like out in the countryside. And then at the end, the Erastes would gift his Romanos a bunch of gifts, but most notably to me was a set of armor. And also the Romanos would be able to re-enter society and be known as, I believe the word is kleinos, so famous. Like he was known as famous for having gone through this sort of initiation ritual. And then on the island of Thera, so Santorini, these inscriptions have been found, which what I find interesting is that they are, I believe, some of like the earliest in like the Greek alphabet, like use of the alphabet. And they're at a sanctuary to Apollo, and it's literally saying like, so-and-so banged so-and-so, and then so-and-so banged me. And, or like, so-and-so banged so-and-so, like, and he also danced for Apollo. Like, they call upon Apollo. So like there's a lot of debate as to whether these inscriptions are, graffiti, because they kind of are similar to, much different context, but like later Roman Pompeian graffiti.
Yeah. Which it's often, just for the context of listeners too, like it's one of those places would, I imagine, I mean, I know the case for Pompeii, but given it's Thera, Santorini, you're talking about, these are places where we have really unique examples where we can have surviving graffiti, whereas normally those things would be lost to time, but both of those places were preserved by volcanic eruptions. But I imagine, like saying all of that these inscriptions from Thera had to be much later, because like the eruption happened before like the alphabet existed.
Yes. No, this is true. So these are from the, I want to say the 8th, 7th century.
Oh, cool.
8th and 7th centuries. And the argument rages. My personal opinion is that they actually are of a sort of like sacredness, because they like call explicitly upon Apollo at this sanctuary to Apollo. And also if they were seen as profane or blasphemous, they probably would have been scratched out. Like the fact they still were there kind of indicates, okay, they seem to have been connected to this religious space.
It's also very Apollo. Sorry,
yeah.
Just like very Apollo.
Very true. Very true. That's a great point. Didn't even think about that. But so you have these in I guess the preceding archaic period. In the Archaic period, preceding the Classical period, you had pederasty as a sort of an initiation ritual in various parts of Greece, and which then carried into, in certain city-states, into the Classical period. And this is sort of, I guess, the underpinnings to go back to Plato, to what they were trying to get at, because now you have like philosophers in the mix, and they have to kind of like not necessarily problematize, but like understand why things are the way that they are, I guess, as philosophers do. And so they, in the symposium, I speak as though like the interlocutors in the dialogue are like, they're in the room with me now. But meanwhile, it's like, Plato.
Where is Plato?
Yeah.
I don't really want him around.
Exactly. But there's a very discrete difference between like cosmic love, I want to say, like, or Uranus love, and or
Eros,
just
yeah,
just like the more baser erotic love. And the idea was that this basic erotic love was not what pederastic relationships should be about. Like, if you have that, then it's bad. Which, I mean, I agree. And so what the symposium really does is talk about like the virtues that can be gleaned. So again, harkening back on this sort of like initiation process, this sort of like this mentoring process, I guess, that could be derived from these relationships. And so Phaedrus, in his speech, is explicit about how this would be really great for the military. How if you had an army of soldiers made up of pederastic relationships, then they would never lose a battle. And what I find interesting is that he's like, well, it's because the Erastes, the older lover, he would never abandon the younger to be killed, and the younger would want to impress his boyfriend, so he'd fight harder. And I'm like, yeah, great, classic toxic stuff. Love that. And then the next speech, Pausanias, he goes even further and says basically these relationships should be used to cultivate virtue. So the older mentor, the older Erastes, he should be teaching the younger Romanos basically like how to be a virtuous man, pretty much. And the idea being that if he does this, then it would better the city as a whole, because then you would have a virtuous, citizen body. So then I took those two speeches and then looked at Nisus and Euryalus, this episode in Virgil's Aeneid, and to give context for listeners, in this part of the Aeneid, Aeneas is in Italy. He's like, I'm going to go get some Italian allies. You guys, pop a squat while I go do that. And then the Trojan army gets, besieged. They're under attack. And so these two soldiers, Nisus and Euryalus, are like, all right, let's sneak out across enemy lines, go warn Aeneas, like, hey, this is the situation. You got to hurry back and help us. And the way that Virgil depicts them is very much in this pederastic, like older Erastes, younger Romanos dynamic. So Nisus is the Erastes, Euryalus is the Romanos, and Nisus is specifically saying, what really stuck out to me was he says, what is this desire that, is making me want to perform this deed? Like, it's almost as if the desire has become a god to me. And the word that he uses specifically is cupido. And when you look at Plato's speeches in the Symposium, it talks specifically about how Eros, again, desire, will be the god that inspires the soldiers to go for virtue, pretty much. And this then gets the two soldiers, they go to Aeneas' son, Ascanius, and basically get permission to go, on this mission. They get caught because Euryalus sees a nice shiny helmet, and then they're killed. Here's what's like really important to me, at least in my nerdy brain, is Euryalus dies first. So the beloved dies first, and Nisus is unable to defend him, but because he's unable to defend him, he then is killed. And this to me is like, okay, this is how you have them being the ideal relationship because with Achilles and Patroclus, Achilles in Plato's Symposium is the Eromenos, and Patroclus is the Erastes. So it's the reverse. Patroclus dies first, and then Achilles dies for him afterwards. According to Plato, this is what the Erastes should be doing. If the Eromenos either lives or dies, doesn't make a difference. The Erastes should be dying for him. The Eromenos shouldn't have to die for him. That's why I was like, okay, Nice and Euryalus, they are specifically a platonic romantic couple. Platonic with a capital P.
Yeah. But also, etymologically, I've been thinking about, because, sometimes you just have a brain that thinks about etymology, on a regular basis. And I think about platonic so often, because it's we say platonic, but then also you go back to Plato and it's do you mean platonic? Because... But also just to go to everything you just said, because it's so interesting. And I've always found this, the Symposium is both so interesting and so messy. It's wild. It's an incredible piece because it really does give you so much information, I think, about these types of relationships in the ancient world, and then obviously also is so problematic. But one of the things that interests me is how Plato, through that conversation, is essentially trying to retcon Achilles and Patroclus, right? Because what he's trying to do is write an Erastes-Eromenos relationship into a Homeric text, a work and a story which preceded Erastes-Eromenos relationships, and that's why he can't quite make it work, because it existed outside of that mentality. It's just such an interesting thing because you're everything fits, and then you have Virgil coming in later, who's writing with all of this in mind, with all of this in his background. That's just the fun of ancient texts broadly, right? Is all of the stuff that they did and did not know, and looking at why some people write things differently with all of this information. And the Aeneid, for all that I don't really care about the Aeneid as a piece of Roman literature, I do care about the Aeneid as a late stage epic, I guess is how I would phrase it. I care about it as an epic poem written in full realization of everything that came before it, because I think that it is quite unique in that way. And this is such a great example of that, because he clearly could write. He basically he wrote what Plato wanted Achilles and Patroclus to be.
Yeah. No, and I just have to say that's also why I love the Aeneid. Is because it to me is this apogee of classical literature up until that point. Because again, like you said, he had all this amazing literature before him to work with.
And he wrote it on purpose, which I think a lot of people, it's hard to differentiate that from Homer, because we conceptualize Homer as a person who wrote it, and that is generally incorrect.
Yeah.
And so if you really think of it, no, the Aeneid was written, whereas, the Homeric epics, we could say, were composed, right? They weren't, nobody sat down and was I'm going to write this out in this poetic verse. No one sat down and was I'm going to do this, whereas Virgil then did. And so what does that impact, how he chose to tell his story? It's just so interesting compared to the alternative.
No, absolutely. And what I find interesting about Homer in that, again, my history advisor was of the mind that, and I know that this is a scholarly camp, that I'm sure, why not? That because Homer was sort of a composite of traditions and whatnot, you would have had, and it would have been composed during this Iron Age period where you had in places like Crete and Thera, pederastic relationships as these initiation rituals. You would have some bones to throw to them, pretty much.
Yeah.
in the Homeric epics, while also for communities who didn't like that, who didn't have those relationships, and were we do not support. You couldn't go to the Rhapsode and be hey, what's going on here? It'd be I didn't say that they were, lover and beloved. That's not there. It's
You're
not-
reading into it.
Yep. Which I mean, to me, that makes the Homeric epics like even that much more rich.
Mhm.
Because it's just, there's a fullness of like Greekness all over the Greek world, pretty much.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's also interesting to think about them as like composites over such a long period of time,
Yeah.
too, right? Where like there's I don't think this really applies to Achilles and Patroclus because it's like so heavily in it like is the story. But for so many other things, like you can imagine that these moments or references, similes, asides, whatever, like you can imagine them being put in at some point when a city state was particularly relevant, or when like a certain thing might be more like
Right.
people might connect more to these moments or these stories, like these myths, like because there's so many similes and there's so many like myths within the myth.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to imagine like where those were coming from, whether they were like inserted later, and if so, why. Like I love that level of speculation.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I love it. But moving beyond Homer, so
Yeah.
that was, or like moving back to Virgil, I should say.
Mm.
So I wrote that paper. It's now, if anyone wants to read an article form of it, it's in Ancient World magazine, where I get into like the
I
nitty
can
gritty.
link to it. Amazing.
Yes. So I had basically this paper and all this, symposium, gayness, military stuff in mind, then going into my last semester of college, where I took a seminar on specifically 5th century Athens, so classical Athens. And while I was in the course, I did, we all had to do like research and presentations on specific topics. I did mine, I think, on like the judicial system and also on the military. And while I was doing it on the military, I knew in the back of my head about the Sacred Band of Thebes, which
I've been waiting. I've been waiting.
I know. I don't, because I know you've had people who talk about Thebes.
No, I
before,
haven't.
But
I need to.
No. Okay.
I've had Thebes, but I've been like aching for a specific. I need to have somebody come on talk about the Sacred Band specifically. But feel free, however much you want. But I've not. Yeah, I mean, God, however much you want, because it's definitely been like on my list.
So I guess like just as like a prelude before I talk, because I use the Sacred Band of Thebes a lot in my fiction writing. And
that even more.
Yeah. But so like, I guess it's like a prelude. So I knew honestly probably from like tumblr.com, like that. Respect. There was like the Sacred Band of Thebes, which is an army made up of 150 same-sex couples, of an Erastus and a Romanos, and that they were badasses pretty much. They won not every battle, but pretty much almost every battle that we have with them recorded.
Like Alex the OK, as my producer Michaela would require me to call him. Yeah. He had to really like work to defeat them. And I just love that they were like what made them famous for being like what made them, everyone knew that what made them so good was that they were all in these like romantic relationships.
Exactly. And like it has, so all right, we're gonna put Thebes, or not Thebes, Athens to the side. Let's talk about Thebes.
Happily.
So in the 4th century, so the Sacred Band of Thebes came about in the 4th century. I want to say in the 379. It was formed 378 BC. After the Peloponnesian War, Athens loses. Sparta's then they're the big dogs in Greece, and they set up in 382 a military regime in Thebes. They're basically let in by oligarchic supporters in Thebes.
Spartans?
I know.
Involved in oligarchy? It's not relatable at all today.
Not at all. But so all the democratic faction leaders, they actually fled to Athens, which is interesting because Thebes and Athens had, a let's say less than harmonious history with one another.
Very long-standing beef.
Yes.
Very long-standing beef.
Exactly. And so then in 379, the democratic partisans of Thebes they snuck back into the city, and during the Aphrodisia festival in honor of Aphrodite, they dressed up as women, as prostitutes, essentially. And while the Spartan commander at the time in charge of the city was, feasting, it's a festival for Aphrodite.
Drunk.
Yeah,
he was getting drunk and he was having sex. Let's be perfectly honest.
Exactly. So he's like, bring the ladies in. The ladies come in. They rip off their clothes. They got knives, and they're not ladies. And they're able to retake the city. And the democratic faction was led by these awesome guys, Pelopidas and Epaminondas. And we know the most about the sacred band from Plutarch's life of Pelopidas. Very sadly, Plutarch's life of Epaminondas has been lost. I'm like, it's been over 2,000 years and I'm still not over it.
It's okay. Ovid wrote a Medea and I'll never get over that being lost.
Oh my gosh. We have, there's too much loss.
Truly.
Honestly. We can't
everything women ever wrote other than the stuff Sappho survived randomly.
Truly. Hey, shout out to those Egyptian garbage pits.
Damn right. They give us everything. Women were trash, and I'll take it.
But so they kick the Spartans out. They know, Pelopidas and Epaminondas know, okay, they're not going to be happy about this. They're going to come back and try to whip our ass. And another Theban, Gorgidas, I can't remember off the top of my head if it's like explicitly linked to being his idea, but he is the one that's credited to creating the sacred band. And basically he's like, okay, if we have an army of people who are boyfriends, then they'll be unstoppable. Again, going off of ideas that are discussed in Plato's Symposium, which was being composed.
Basically, that same-sex relationships make you more virtuous, which I think is like just to spell it out.
Yeah, yes,
like,
thank you.
That's what Plato said.
Exactly. And
it was used to also like bring women down a peg, but still, it's interesting and valuable.
No, literally, that was another thing I remember saying to a friend once, like, who asked me, like, oh, why was ancient Greece so gay? I'm like, honestly, like, when you're that misogynistic, it just goes.
Truly.
Like, they misogynize themselves into being gay. Like, I have no other way of describing it. Like, like, really sad, but, like, really absurd.
But also really gay.
But also really gay at the end of the day.
And that's nice.
Yeah.
Now.
Exactly. But Thebes in particular, they had a very unique relationship with like homosexuality, in that it doesn't seem to be the way that it was, let's just go with Athens, but also with Sparta, where you had, like, with Athens in particular, it was usually between men who were in their 20s who were soldiers, and then like guys in their teens. And then when the Aromanos, the younger guy, turned 20, entered his 20s, then the relationship would end and he would turn into an Erastes and court
20 is the line.
Yeah, I know interesting.
Cool.
I'm like, yeah,
I'm like, the idea, sorry, as a woman nearing her late 30s, The idea of a 20-year-old being an adult, let alone
I
like on the
know.
older side.
Yeah.
I mean, all right.
No, it's
all
crazy. Right. And what's interesting is that the argument for Athenian like men, like the Erastes being in their 20s, is because then when they turn 30, when they enter their 30s, that's then when they would be, you know, getting their child brides, pretty much.
Oh, goody.
Yeah. So the argument's like, oh, like these guys, let's say they want a romantic relationship. Well, they can't have a romantic relationship with a girl. So that's when they'll do it with other guys. And I'm like, okay, like, cool, whatever you say. Like,
I just have to say this because there's a line I've been running through my head. I mean, a lot lately, generally. Well, not lately, but just mostly in this conversation. I'm talking around in circles. I've been rewatching Parks and Recreation.
Love.
And there is just this incredible line, and it's so funny and true and relevant, where there's like basically like what's meant to be a bigoted Christian woman is talking about something, and somebody says, what about the Romans? And she just says perverts. And then they say the Greeks, and she says gay perverts. And that's a very poor rendition. The clip is generally hilarious, but like it's just so true.
Oh yeah. Just really, really gross stuff at the end of the day. See, that's why, this is why though I love Thebes, because they were a little less gross. It doesn't seem that they had this sort of like, oh, the younger guy's got to be a teenager. Like, no. They would have, honestly, it seems to be lifelong monogamous relationships. And there doesn't also seem to have been an emphasis on like this age differential.
Right.
It very much, like it could have been, you know, like a year, maybe 2 years, but
sure, like a regular relationship today, like that's fine.
Exactly. But it wasn't this like strict, you know, you turn 20, you gotta be an Erastes now.
Yeah. Well, and that's what makes it's funny that it's the Athenians being grosser, because like of course it would be the Athenians.
Yeah. Well, wait until I talk about the Spartans.
Oh, you mean they're worse? Oh my god. Or different. But it's so interesting because like that's what that line, those like strict quote unquote rules, that's what makes it so gross and predatory. Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously also like the general age issues, but like, you know, as you mentioned that Yentl said in a past episode, like it's not that the girls that they were then marrying later like were older, so it wasn't that necessarily that the boys were like younger than the girls in these situations, but the fact that there are these like strict rules around it really make it so that it's just like it's like a weird cultural practice versus an actual like romantic relationship, which it sounds like the Thebans were like, no, like we're just like life partners, not some weird like it's supposed to be mentorship but also there's sex. Like that's so interesting.
Exactly.
And better.
No, I agree. And the Xenophon, the Athenian Spartan, I don't know what he would prefer me to call him, probably Spartan, but like writer at the time. So he's the main source or main contemporary source that we have for this period of history, the 4th century. And he is notably silent on the sacred band of Thebes. He says that Thebes had a select men, so like they had some special fighters. And he says in his symposium that the Thebans would put lovers next to their beloveds in battle, because that was the only way to get them to fight. Because if like they would be if they didn't have someone next to them, like their boyfriend next to them pretty much, they would just run away. Which is like, sure.
So it's just anti-Theban propaganda.
Oh, 100%. Like
from an Athenian or a Spartan?
Yeah.
Who would have guessed?
Who would have thought? But he wrote in, I want to say in his Laconian constitution about the Spartans, he says how in Thebes, when he's comparing Spartan pederasty versus Theban pederasty, and is like, well, in Thebes, the men live with each other susogentes. So also totally pronounced that wrong. But basically,
I wouldn't know.
Yoked together is the translation,
Oh.
which is actually a word that is used to describe heterosexual marriages.
I was gonna say, yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
like it would be, the same.
Yeah. So it really does, like, the picture that emerges, and he's saying it obviously as a slight. So, like, when like my critical historian hat's like, well, he could be like being dramatic,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we can also maybe take it at face value. Like,
Well, yeah, and when we have the material evidence for the
Yeah.
sacred band, and then also things like that, like it makes sense that sure, he could be meaning it as like a slight,
yeah,
but it also lines up with archaeological evidence.
right. No, it's true. And whereas so that's Theban pederasty, or same-sex relationships, I think would be a better way of just describing them. Whereas Spartan was like really gross. And the like
I want to keep
Simone-
making jokes about how
Yeah.
haha, oh my god, you believe the Spartans are gross? But then I'm like, it's old, because obviously they're just fucking terrible, and
so bad.
now
so
more than
bad.
ever, the
Oh my God.
relevancy of their terribleness
Absolutely.
is just hard to take.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like with Xenophon, it's like the Olympic gold medal Simone Biles level like mental gymnastics routine that he does to talk about how, like, yeah, Spartans had same-sex relationships, but they weren't sexual at all. Like, they weren't doing anything. Like, he basically when a Spartan youth turned 12, the state would then give him what they called an inspirer, because he was supposed to inspire the younger Spartan, into being a better soldier, virtuous man, etc. And again, Xenophon's like, this was totally educational, you guys. Like, there was nothing else going on. Meanwhile, everyone else is like, no, like, this is like, Spartans in particular were seen to be extremely into homosexual like same-sex relationships, and such that the like a bi phrase for anal sex was Laconian ass, like, because they liked it so much. And so it's like, Xenophon, you can do all the, like, mental gymnastics you want, but at the end of the day, like, we can see through this.
We also, from the mythological side, I'm trying to think of if there's more, but like Apollo and Hyacinth is explicitly like, Hyacinthus is Spartan.
Yeah.
He's meant to be like,
Yeah.
And I feel like there might be more. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. That's funny.
No, and the sanctuary at Thera that I mentioned earlier was Spartan.
Oh.
So it's like, okay.
Yeah, okay.
But
Apollo loved it. You guys love it. Like, let's
exactly.
be honest.
Yeah. But so the Thebans, they had a more, not to be anachronistic, but they had a more modern sort of understanding of male homosexuality and treatment of it. And they then formed this army, were able to beat a Spartan force at the Battle of Tegura shortly after they retook Thebes. And then in 371 BC, Sparta marched back into Boeotia to basically reassert their dominance in the region. Thebes at the time had formed the Boeotian League, which was just like an alliance of cities in the region. And Sparta was like, oh, we don't like that. Like, what are you doing? And so they marched back into Boeotia and clashed with Thebes at this very famous battle, Leuctra, which is actually the subject of a short story that I wrote coming out next month. And this was a really significant battle because it broke essentially the Spartan mirage that had like prevailed up until that point. So, like, the Spartans were able to win so many battles up until that point because literally people were so scared that they just wouldn't even fight. And Epaminondas came up with this unique stratagem, which was normally how ancient Greek armies fought was you would put your best soldiers on your right flank against the opposite army's left flank, which is where their weakest soldiers were. So
I feel like that would be very quickly circumvented as soon as the others realized they could just swap.
Yeah, well, that's what it took hundreds of years, but Epaminondas just came up with that.
Guys.
It was like, no, what we're going to do is put our best soldiers on our left flank and put best against best. And so he puts
I'm not to be screaming duh at the ancient people, but okay.
No, I know. I don't disagree. But this is also where the phrase cutting off the snake's head comes from. Because Epaminondas apparently like took a snake, took its head off, cut its head off, and was like, this is what we got to do to the Spartan army, you guys. We got to put the sacred band up against the Hippias, the Spartan royal guard, and their soldiers, the other Spartiates. And this works. Like, basically the Thebans charged right at the Spartan, like, best Spartan line, killed the Spartan king, Cleombrotus, like, right away. And then it just turns into an absolute rout. So many Spartans die, and it breaks the Spartan mirage. It is such a devastating battle, or defeat, I should say, that Thebes is now seen as like they're the big dogs, pretty much, in Greece, and they're able to then march into the Peloponnese, like actually into Spartan territory, and rebuild, I should say. So they free a bunch of helots and are able to rebuild the city of Mycenae. And that's seen as like another death blow because all these helots are, they have a city now, essentially.
Okay, sorry, I gotta stop you here because really? So do we have evidence they like freed? So just to the listeners who need the reminder that Spartan helots were like, they're very, very, a very Spartan slave class.
Yes.
That were like unique to Sparta in their terrible situation. But also a lot of them were originally from Messenia. So the Thebans just like let them have it again?
Yeah, Epaminondas rebuilt the city because he knew that the only reason why the helots were able to, not the only reason, but like a big reason why they were able to stay in bondage was because they didn't have a city to, build around. Yeah,
they didn't.
They didn't have a home.
Yeah, sorry, I need to phrase a point here that's not at all related to current events. Not even a little bit. But it's almost like a strategy for dehumanization and breaking down the wills of a particular group of people would be to strip them of their ancestral homeland and basically revoke their rights to any kind of citizenship or ability to move or regain any kind of official countryhood that they might have had originally.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like that's what empires do to break people.
Yeah, precisely. And that Epaminondas understood this well and was like, all right, I'm going to then rebuild the city. And I have to be honest, I can't remember off the top of my head. From what I remember, it's that a lot of helots after Leuctra just ran away. Like when they learned that the city was being rebuilt, they were like, all right, we're just going to get out if we can. And that was again, another death blow to Spartan supremacy was this loss of now I need to figure out how I want to phrase this, but slaver legitimacy. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but with Mycenae now as a city for the helots, they couldn't, as you said, psychologically enslave them as well.
Yeah, well, every time I have a conversation these days, it inevitably descends into not at all relevant topics, and it's not because I bring it there ever, never. But that's so interesting, and I think maybe really, really powerful proof that freedom, real actual freedom to people and return to their, or rather it's almost and push back against me if I'm wrong. But it's almost like Sparta had set up what we might call an apartheid situation, where some people had more rights than others, because the Spartans, of course, had full citizenship rights. But if you weren't Spartan, you weren't considered a full citizen, and that is designed to break people's will. But when they are given agency and freedom and access to community, the imperial boot isn't so strong.
Yep, it kind of just turns into a weak, flimsy sandal. Yep, and that, and that was Thebes again. That's why I love Epaminondas so much. He's one of my favorite historical
I've always
figures.
loved Thebes, I have to say, and I also didn't know any of this. So you've just given me so many more reasons to love Thebes.
Oh yeah, no, they're awesome. And for any listeners who want to learn more, James Romm recently wrote a book called The Sacred Band about this period in history that is absolutely unreal. I wish it had come out when I was doing research for some other writing, but I'm just really happy that we have it now. It really covers Epaminondas in just this period super duper well. And unfortunately for Thebes, they had Epaminondas, they had Pelopidas, but once they both died, they didn't really have any replacements of the same caliber. And so you then had kind of a multipolar system in Greece in terms of state powers, really up until the Battle of Chaeronea in the 330s, which is when Philip of Macedon came in and was like, all right, I'm just gonna conquer Greece now.
Oh, right. His dad did it. Alex the OK didn't even go down.
Yes. Yeah.
Michaela would have been screaming at me. I'm glad you corrected.
No. Well, no, Alexander was there. So this is very, here I'm this is the great irony of gay queer history, is that Alexander the Great, infamous bisexual warlord of antiquity, what led the cavalry that, again, this is, everything's scholarly, is contentious. I personally subscribe to the theory that the Theban sacred band, so during the Battle of Chaeronea, Thebes was fighting with Athens. Athens broke apart. They I don't want to say detached, but basically there was an opening in their flanks for the Macedonian cavalry to basically come in and attack the Theban sacred band. And the cavalry was led by Alexander. And they killed every member of the sacred band to a man. And the reason why I believe that this is how the battle went down is because we have the archaeological remains of the Theban sacred band at this battle. And we can tell from their skulls that some of these soldiers were struck by blows from above. So it would have made sense for a horseman's coming down, throwing down his sword and, killing them. And so Alexander is the one that ultimately destroys them. But there's a quote in Plutarch that I, still find very memorable, which is that Philip, when he looks at the destruction, all these dead, couples, goes, let any man who thinks what they did shameful, not think that, essentially. I'm paraphrasing now. But, which is to say that, there, again, this sort of more modern conception of Theban homosexuality was seen as by contemporaries not normal or preferred, which I disagree with those opponents, and it seems that Philip is on my side.
No, it is so interesting though to look back at how those things are viewed. I don't know, it's so interesting the way a lot of bigots try to erase gay history and say that didn't exist at all, and it's but what's more interesting is to look at the complexities and obviously there hasn't really been a period where it was ever this is great, you should get married and everyone should live happily ever after, and that sucks. But we do have such periods of or such evidence for like the real respect and value that people have given to same-sex relationships like since the beginning of time. And I think it's so interesting to like hold on to those ideas and revisit them and just, I don't know, just, I mean, I love all of the evidence because I like to shove it down people's throats.
Same.
But yeah, it's fucking interesting. And like, yeah, I don't know. Any kind of attempt to like erase that stuff from history is so nonsensical for lots of reasons. I mean, it's obviously horrifying at its absolute core, but it's also like, it's just dumb. And I think that's where I'll just like never agree with those people, because it's like, it's stupid. This stuff is just fucking fascinating. Like, why are you so insecure that you need to like, pretend it doesn't exist instead of just being like, this is interesting and different?
Yeah. No, 100%. And like, again, it's interesting to me how, you know, a lot of what these, I'm thinking like specifically about like, you know, far right appropriations of ancient culture. Like, again, you know, going back to those horrible Spartans, like they're put on such a pedestal by these, you know, hate groups. And it's like, they were, you know, banging each other in the barracks. Like they had a lot of views on things that, you know, don't really fit, you know, the current appropriations. And also, I mean, again, I always get hung up on Sparta because like they really do suck on like, and I mean that like I mean that in like a level, on like a military level. Like I'm thinking like they don't, like it was a mirage. Like and I know you did like a series on Sparta, so like
and the mirage specifically, because that's what's so interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Like they, like when you pull that back, they were just like, you know, another city-state.
Yeah, they were good at propaganda.
Exactly.
There are modern parallels.
Yes, exactly. And like oligarchs running propaganda, who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
But so that's why when I was so drawn to Thebes, because they like are the ones who single-handedly broke this mirage during this period of history, and like using an army of you know, gay guys, like or queer guys. I don't know what they liked, but
fair.
You know, but it's very like fascinating to me in all that respect. What I was fascinated by and like really want to explore was sort of how it tied into masculinity, which again is something that these groups today are so hung up upon, and how in the Athenian context, basically what I wanted to explore was, so I knew about the sacred band. Why didn't Athens ever form a sacred band or something like that? Because we have so much evidence from that city-state that, you know, they were really into same-sex relationships. And basically what I ended up doing kind of like in-depth research on was tying these pederastic relationships, you know, as discussed in like the symposium and elsewhere, to the Athenian ephibeia. Which was a military training system that, again, this is another like area of scholarly dispute, but we don't know when it really began, but it seems to be the late 4th century. We know about it from Aristotle's writing pretty much.
Okay.
But
so after Athens had already kind of fallen.
Exactly.
His stature.
But you had certain, what I like to call like precursors, to basically where like men of the same age range, so 18 to 20, was when Athenian young men would become ephebes. And basically what an ephebe is like an unarmed hoplite, or a light-armed hoplite. That's a better way of phrasing it. They would.
Can you? Sorry,
Yeah.
this is how much my show never talks about the military.
No worries.
I know the word hoplite very well, but could I fully define it as compared to anyone else in the military? No. Could you give us a little, just like an overview? Hoplite,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
So, of course, the hoplite was the basically like when you think of a stereotypical Greek soldier, like with the big horse crest helmet, had a big shield, the apis, and a big old spear, and bronze armor. They would fight in phalanxes. So now I'm like, how do I describe a phalanx? But basically, like the big blocks of soldiers.
Yeah, when they would lock their shields together in certain, or rather, like arrange them in certain ways to provide like a larger shield.
Exactly. Yeah. And
again, military historian over here for sure.
No, I mean, hey, that's better than how I could
phalanx,
describe it.
So great.
But, they were basically they were the aristocratic land infantry.
Okay.
And specifically aristocratic because you had to supply your own armor. So you could only get this armor if you were wealthy, pretty much.
Right.
You could afford it. And then, of course, the wealthiest would be cavalry because they could afford horses. And the hoplite was then even though really only aristocrats could be hoplites, it seems to be that most citizens who were in the Athenian military were rowers in the navy.
Because they did have a good navy.
They had a really good navy. And all you needed to do to become a rower was, I think, buy the pad that you would sit on in the ship.
This is crazy, the amount that they expected people to bring to their military positions.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
No, I agree. So the hoplites were these heavily armed soldiers, and the ephebe was basically the opposite of this. So he wouldn't have armor. He would be just like a light armed soldier. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting, there's a French scholar, Vidal Naquet. He wrote really the book, I think, about this, called The Black Hunter. And it is about how the ephebeia, the system of military training, was reflective of kind of like the transition for Athenian males from, young men to full citizen hoplite adults. And that being said, even people in the Navy would go through the ephebeia, which I found interesting. But so it was seen as like a training system for both the military and for being a citizen. And what they would do, what that means is that the young men, so the ephebes, would have to go from a state of, I believe what he calls uncooked to cooked. So in order to become a full hoplite, you have to first become the opposite. And what this meant is that, the hoplite lives in Athens and he's heavily armored. The ephebe lives his first year, he's in a fort or a couple of forts on the Piraeus. And then in his second year, he's on the fringes of Attica in these other forts. So he's at the fringes, like the physical fringes of Athenian society. And then, in addition, during the Oskophoria festival, which I believe was a festival for Demeter, ephebes would dress up as women. So again, go into this idea of, in order to become a man, first you kind of have to be a woman. And basically what I found with this, formal military institution was this is kind of how they treated heterosexual relationships as well. And what I argued in my paper was essentially that the pederastic relationship, because it was usually like, I don't know, when let's say a guy was in his mid-teens, so right before the FFA started, if you're going off of Plato, he should be learning from his Erastes basically the same virtues that he will then learn in the FFA. So it's it's kind of like a primer for the more formal civic military training he gets later on, and it'll be, through this non-institutional, like, romantic relationship. That being said, like, the way that Athenian same-sex relationships worked were so wackadoodle-doo. I have a quote written down that I just need to say because I'm like, this perfectly encapsulates how, like, masculinity was.
Oh God, I'm excited and horrified.
During this period, it's from the historian John Winkler. In Athens, male life is warfare, masculinity is a duty and hard-won achievement, and the temptation to desert one side is very great. So these young men had, like, they were expected to be in these same-sex relationships, but at the same time, you couldn't, like, enjoy it at all. Like, you couldn't, and that's reflected in the courtship process. So usually what would happen is, like, the lover who, again, to build out the dynamics, it's like the Erastes would usually be like a freshly minted soldier, fresh off of their military training, like in their early mid-20s, whatever. And they would then try to court the Aromanos by giving them, I don't know, like hairs, singing them songs, like kind of crazy, romantic gestures, let's say.
I love that. This is also coming from my knowledge of, like, Victorian Edwardian literature and everything, but like the length of time that humans determined that, like, giving somebody else some of your hair was like a romantic gesture, like that went on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant like rabbits.
You meant literal rabbits. Okay, well then the fucking, in the Victorian period, they were like cutting off actual hair and being like, "Here's a lock of my hair. I love you." Wild. But that is so much funnier that it's a rabbit. All right, well then, just broadly, different forms of the same homonym. They're giving off hairs.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry. That's funnier too. I got you a rabbit.
Yeah. No. Like. God. And like you can see that in like the evidence that we have for this is from like vase paintings.
Nice. Okay, yeah. Now I can picture a
and the idea was that the Romanos would be like, no, like basically playing hard to get until he deems the Erastes like, oh, he's someone who's going to teach me how to be a good man, pretty much. Right. And then. So this is important because later on in life, when the young Athenian like is now an adult, he is like a full citizen, charges could be brought against them for how they behaved as teenagers. That would then invalidate their laws, essentially. So we have like a case called against Timarchus, which is basically arguing that this guy Timarchus, when he was a teenager, was like prostituting himself and was basically behaving, unmanly. And the threat of this was, even though this was happening while he was a teenager, while he was like expected to be in these same-sex relationships, by, not playing it cool, I guess, for lack of a better word, he could then be charged. And his current, like whatever laws he, brought forward and passed as an adult would then be invalidated because of how he was potentially perceived as behaving when he was a teenager.
And when he was in the Aromanos position.
Exactly.
Gross. Yeah.
So it's like on top of it, you have the society like pressuring these men, these young guys, to be in these relationships. But at the same time, it was like, no, like you can't act like you like it at all.
Yeah.
Which, I'm sure many of them did not. And and then so like they would have to behave a very specific way, and then when they became men,
Yeah.
they could not then be faulted years later as being like, you enjoy being a Romanos too much.
See,
So
okay.
nightmare. Honestly, I
Yeah.
remember reading about this and being like, this is horrible. And I remember talking to my brother about it when I was doing this research. He was like, Harrison, this just sounds like really aggressive hazing. And I'm like, you're not wrong.
Yeah. But I think that's like, I think that looking at this is so important because it's such a great reminder that the idea of toxic masculinity is just
Mhm.
as impactful on men as it is on women. Like, this is toxic masculinity. This is the belief that, like, if you are not a certain way, that you're, like, quote unquote not a man, and it is terrible for everyone involved.
Yes.
And so, like, yeah, this desire some people have to fight against the idea that toxic masculinity exists, like, it's hurting men just as much. Really is. Like, that's so damaging and terrible.
No, 100%. And that amazing segue is what a lot of my historical fiction writing is about.
Great.
And some of my poetry is, so I write short and also longer prose, usually historical fiction, a little bit of fantasy, but set in antiquity or Middle Ages. And a lot of my stories, namely this one that's actually coming out next month, focuses on how, like, really ancient masculinity was so aggressively toxic, and if you didn't buy in to that system, and like you were a dude, and even if you did buy in, like, it still sucked to go through it.
Yeah.
But even if you didn't buy in, then you were especially like ostracized.
Yeah.
And it's horrible.
Yeah. Well, okay, and I've been thinking about this myth since we started talking about this, and kind of waiting for the right time to bring it up, and this is it. Because I think that, like, yes, everything you've just said, yes. And then I also think that there's this level of propaganda put in place on the ancient men, and to basically, like, emphasize what you've just gone through, which is that, like, you're not allowed to like it. But also you have to go through it, and it's good for you.
Yeah.
But you're not allowed to like it. And to me, that is, like, it is basically written into their mythos through the story of Zeus and Ganymede, right? Like,
totally.
Yeah. Like, that story is about an older man and a younger man, and Zeus abducts him. It's meant to be bad and traumatic. And then this kid is quote unquote serving Zeus for, like, I mean, mythologically, for eternity, like, given this kind of, like, it's not obviously spelled out that he's given this eternal youth, but, like, essentially that's what happens, is he's like this permanent Eromenos. And yet, but this is meant to be like a nice story. Like, his dad was given some fancy horses in compensation. Like, it's horrifying. And it's written into the mythos as this kind of, like, origin story that's meant to be nice and good and not terrible, even though on its face it's terrible. But I mean, that's most of Greek mythology, let's be honest.
Yeah. And, like, Spun is romantic. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So
like,
gross.
Yes.
So gross.
But it's like the way they use words like beloved in that way, right? Like, it's propaganda. It reminds me of how they use the word rape and then to mean abduction and obviously sexual assault. But I've had the number of people I've had criticize my work on the show by being like, rape just meant kidnap, like, it, as if it, like, because I would be like, yeah, so that's rape, like, and they'd be like, well, rape just meant kidnap, and I just want to scream into the void, like, why do you think that is?
Yeah.
It's not because there wasn't rape, it's because they weren't acknowledging it as a bad thing. They just were, because it was the crime was taking someone's property. That property was human. Like,
yep.
This is just how language and words evolve and things. So I don't know. I don't even know how I got on there, because I just rambling about toxic masculinity, but it's so dark and so interesting.
It is. So that's the thing. Is, like, I find it's fascinating because, again, we live obviously now in a patriarchal world, like, with,
do we ever?
with just like severe toxic masculinity, like now more than ever, just like really pervading. And I was talking to my friend the other day about how I'm like looking at like people my age, younger, and I'm like guys, and I'm like, I just want to like grab them by the shoulders and be like, how can I get you to stop being, interested in fascism, like, for lack of a better word, like, how can I knock this out of you? Like,
you have to laugh because otherwise you want to cry.
it's true. It's like,
yeah,
it's interesting because like mostly because like I love ancient history. I love military history. So the algorithm on all these apps, it's trying to hook me in. And like I can see just how easy it is for young men to just like totally be swept up in this disgusting system. And I'm just like, gosh, what is it? What will it take to like get you to realize like, no, this isn't good stuff. And like, not only is it not good for like other people and everyone, but it's also not good for you. And
well, think of like all of the red pill bullshit of like that realm, or like the incel nonsense. The what's his name people, what's Andrew whatever
Tate.
Like all of that stuff. It's harmful to the men just as much, but like, and it's just like so toxic and terrible. But you can see how people fall into these mentalities, especially with, and that's. Now it's still connected to ancient Rome because of the Ovid of it all. They literally use his work as like a the like pickup manual, but like the military side of it, like it's so easy to fall into it because also like Roman and Spartan propaganda worked. It worked, and like it just like American propaganda works now, right? Like especially with oh my god, the algorithms. Like I can't even imagine. My algorithm is so feminist that I don't think I'd ever get near that stuff. But like
I'm jealous.
I imagine. But also it's because I never look into the military. And I imagine as soon as I would start, like you're getting that.
No,
it's
like
there.
I just want to see like, I don't know, like how it's like to me, I'm thinking about like Demetrius the Besieger, who was a Hellenistic ruler, and he was he's called the Besieger because he built these wacky siege engines, like just like giant towers, crazy stuff. And I'm like, see, I just want to know about that. Like I just want to see like,
because it's cool and weird, right?
Exactly. I don't need like this guy like doing bicep curls while like screaming like Spartan, like misattributed Spartan quotes, like
Molon Labe!
Exactly. Like,
but they probably don't know how to spell it in Greek.
Oh no, there's definitely like a sigma in there. They love the sigmas.
They love a sigma.
But so I guess what it's disappointing to me just to see like looking at the ancient material, how cultures like Sparta and Athens were able to propagandize this sort of like, not only propagandize but also institutionalize these toxic systems. But then see how it like it's been a couple millennia, and like we're still doing it. And that's why I'm like, let's look at Thebes. Like maybe like they're not perfect, but there are other ancient pre-modern societies and just like lenses to use to really look at. If you want to admire it, I'm not one to be like we should look at the past as a template, but like if you want to think that doesn't mean that I think that you shouldn't look at the past and be like, well, that's cool. Like, that's awesome.
Well, that's what's the fun of being on this side of history is like that ability, which again like seems really obvious but isn't, but that ability to be like, I love this thing, I love learning about it, I love like just really diving into the depths of it. And simultaneously, I can recognize where it's problematic and all of the reasons why it shouldn't be emulated. Like we can and should be interested in and love these things without thinking that they need to be valorized. Like, it's wild that that's like a thing to be said, but I'm like, I love ancient Greek and also, or ancient Greece, and it was also terrible. Like, both of those things can be true.
No, totally. Like, yeah, it is weird today how we have, and it almost feels like almost like a oh my god, what's the word? I'm thinking about like the 18th century, like, or like Victorian, you know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, like, oh, you study something because it's like it has this quality of like worth that's, you know, that prizes it above other things.
Superior.
Superiority.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
I know the feeling.
Like, which is so just, you know, it's not necessary. Like,
it is very Victorian, though. You're right. It's
Yeah.
very Victorian to be looking back. But also it's like, I mean, the Victorians did it and we're doing it now, but it's looking back on those people through the lens of today, and it's and not recognizing that you're doing that. Like, I'm doing that in my show, absolutely, but I am fully aware that I am looking at it through that lens. Whereas so many of these people who see it from the other side are looking at it through the lens of, like, say, Christianity, or rather not even necessarily Christianity as a religion, but I say it as like a cultural, like North American / Western cultural identity.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at it through that, but you can't, like, it doesn't work that way, you know?
No, 100%. Like, even like I'm working on an article right now about not to pivot back to the Santiam. And I apologize in advance that I tend to do this, but about
I have ADHD. I respect this.
I appreciate it. But about a Byzantine folk hero, Digenis Akritis, who I've always found fascinating. And the article will look at how pretty much he embodies certain aspects of pagan masculine heroes. So, like, I specifically look at his parallels with Heracles. And basically the conclusion that I like kind of came to while like reading into everything was, because I know a decent amount about Byzantine culture and like specifically their mentalities in terms of warfare, and they were very much like, no, like, war is bad, like we have to do it, like they did it, but that they still had like that Christian, you know, understanding of like, you know, not great. But so that's why I'm like, oh, with their folk heroes, with their folk stories, they could kind of like outsource these sort of like martial virtues to these not explicitly Christian heroes. And I was reading this and I'm like, yeah, don't tell the Crusaders that, because they'll be like...
And I was just like, that's all I could think of.
No, literally. And it's like...
and then the Crusades happened and that became different.
Exactly. It's like... no, it's very... like, that's an area of, like, that I definitely want to like read more into, is sort of... And I think there's like really good scholarship coming out now about sort of like martial relationship in terms of like psychology in you know, medieval Roman society, especially because it was so different from like the Crusades. Like, they never developed like an idea of holy war. Meanwhile, they were fighting you know, pagans, Islamic powers, like for hundreds of years before the Crusades. And you know, it took like one big campaign for the Crusaders to be like, what about holy war?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, like, these guys did it for hundreds of years and they never really developed that like mindset. Like,
well, it makes me think of the Greeks, where like for all, well, less the Romans, but the Greeks specifically, like for all we, you know, talk about these problematic aspects of their history, like, and even for all that they like, you know, use the word barbarian pretty fast and loose with like anyone who wasn't Greek. And even still with all of that, what they lack compared to the world powers now is like, even though they didn't consider themselves barbarians, like there wasn't this superiority.
Yes.
There wasn't this, like, they were wars and atrocities, absolutely, but they weren't based in this idea that we're helping you by committing atrocities against you because we're superior. And that's what the West does now, where it's like, no, like, I know you're all dying, but like, this is in your best interests because Western, what we bring is better than what you have, even though not like there's zero evidence for that fact, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a very Roman.
Yeah,
idea.
and that's where the whole, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The Romans did that for sure.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's just, and that's where holy war comes in too, right? This superiority, this like, ours is better, and thus we deserve to live, rather than, at least like in the Greeks, like they were definitely doing terrible things. And you know, I mean, when Athens came along, there was a level of superiority happening.
Yeah.
But it wasn't in the same way of based in like, we have to spread our, like, it makes me just think of the way that the West tends to seek to spread our version of democracy, as if it's like an undeniable fact that everyone should have exactly this form, and like, people have to be mad at me. I'm not saying that democracy is bad. I'm not saying the rule of the people is bad. I'm saying that the form that is being forced upon others, or that was like the form as it existed also was like never actually about the rule of all of the people. It was about the rule of a very small subset of people. And I'm just saying we could revisit the idea, because it wasn't built for us. Anyway.
No.
Every conversation I have turns into this. I'm sorry, but I'm not.
It's okay. No worries. It's, the world's on fire. It literally is.
Yeah, but we can still talk about the ancient people doing cool and gay things. So exactly. That's nice.
Yes. No, that's what matters.
Well, I honestly feel like we could probably keep going, but I do try to keep our episodes around an hour and a half. So I would, firstly, let me say, if you want to come back and talk about that Heracles thing you're working on once you're done it, I would love to have you back.
Oh, yeah.
But or anything really. But generally, thank you so much for doing this. And is there anything you want to share with my listeners where they can read more from you, specifically your fiction and stuff? Because I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, so I have a website, harrisonvoss.com. It'll have links to all of my short stories and my poetry, and also to some of like the research I discussed today. You can also, I do not tweet like at all, but if people are still on that website, you can find me at HTV498. I'm now on Blue Sky also at HTVoss, I believe. And yeah, hopefully I'll have some more stuff coming out soon. And yeah, I would love to be back.
Amazing. I did see on your website that like most of the stuff you've have on there, or maybe it's just everything I saw because I am me. But it has very mythological names of your work.
Yes.
Your
I
short
didn't
stories
even
and things.
I did a very short story about Hylas.
I was going to say that's the one I remember most, but like
yes.
Also like that whole page is all like Greek and cute. So I was curious.
Yeah. No, a lot of my short fiction is set in antiquity, and I'm working on a like any writer interested in antiquity, I am working on a myth retelling, like a novel right now.
Surprise! I'm definitely not in the same boat at all. No.
And that again touches on all the themes we discussed today. Mostly toxic masculinity in antiquity and how it sucks or sucked. Hey, it sucks now and it sucked then.
Yeah. I'm so glad to know that you're working on this stuff, and that is like, just even speaking about it this way is so refreshing. So I'm glad to know that that there's work like that being done, because that we need more of it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think so too. But yeah, no, thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you. This was really fun.
This is great.
Well, nerds, thank you all so much for listening. Again, check out the link in the episode's description. I'm worried I meant to say more of those things here, but I don't have it in me. The conversation was recorded a few months back, and I'm just really excited for you all to have heard it. Let's Talk About Myths Baby is written and produced by me, Liv Albert. Michaela Pengawish is the Hermes to my Olympians. She is sleeping in the hotel room next door. I'm jealous of her. Select music by Luke Chaos. The podcast is part of the Memory Collective Podcast Network, which, again, everything is still to come. A lot after this trip, let's be frank. Keep in touch via a newsletter, which will come out soon. Again, mostly when the website is finished, which I hope to be soon. mythsbaby.com/newsletter. I'm going to stop rambling now. Thank you all so fucking much for listening. As always, I absolutely love that I get to do these conversations. They fill me with such joy. I hope you did too. I am Liv, and I love this shit.